Okay, moving on to item number 10, which is public hearings. We have 3 scheduled public hearings. The first one is an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision relating to the World of Life Ministries located at 155 Suites A and C of West May Street. Before I open up the public hearing, I know we have a number of people who wish to speak to that particular issue. Because I have no cards, I have no idea how many of you actually wish to speak. So if I could indulge the audience to raise their hands for those that are anticipating speaking or that would have a desire at this point to speak. You may change that and have a desire to speak later. So those that are wishing to speak before the item, if you could raise your hand, please. We have one. Okay. Then I'll turn it over to Mr. Dowswell to proceed. And I'll open the public hearing.
Tonight I'll refer to you as Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
The item before you tonight is 2 parts. One is to add an assembly use overlay zoning to a piece of property, and the other is to grant a variance. The property, as you mentioned, is at 155 West May Street. This is a photo of it. It's actually 2 properties and 1 building connected by a breezeway. This area that's shaded in sort of a pink or salmon color is the property that is on a single parcel that's referred to as Suites A and B in your staff report. A and C, I'm sorry, in your staff report. For some reason, this parcel has B. It doesn't follow the alphabet as far as the order. This building is 4,700 square feet, of which 1,200 square feet Word of Life Ministries was asking to occupy for an assembly use. And then this parcel here has a 1,200 square foot building. The total building is 5,900 square feet. There is an existing parking lot with 15 parking spaces. If it was brought into ADA compliance, a handicap space would need to be added, a disabled space would need to be added, reducing the number of parking spaces to 14. The current building, minus the 1 parking space that it would have to lose to be ADA compliant, meets our ordinance for that type of office use that's there today. There's a brief history to this to most of the council members. Mr. Charamello and probably is very familiar with as Mr. Batchelor and possibly even Councilmember Kaler. After a long, protracted process, the city adopted an assembly use overlay zone in 2006. It was in response to something that came out of a hearing involving the Calvary Church in the downtown. In essence, what it said was all existing assembly uses were to be grandfathered in and given this overlay, plus a number of additional sites were identified in town that could accommodate an assembly use. And there were 3 specific criteria, which are mentioned in your staff report, that were established as a justification or that the council or the planning commission would have to reach in order for adding the assembly use overlay. 1 was that the property be 1 acre in size. 2 was that it would be located on a collector or arterial. And 3, that it would be otherwise compatible with the existing planned abutting uses. This is a local street. The property is less than 1 acre. And it does impact, in both the planning commission's and staff's opinion, could impact adversely the surrounding area. And I'll explain it as to the reasons for why. And this is the building. You may not be familiar, it's sort of kitty corner to the police station and directly across the street from a public parking lot. And the church is proposing to occupy this portion of the facility. When the assembly use overlay was added, we knew at some point people would come forward and want to add that designation to properties that didn't have it at the time that the ordinance was established. This is the first example of this coming forward. The Planning Commission considered these 2 items at their December 16th meeting. They recommended to the council denial of the assembly use overlay for the reasons that are stated in your staff report, and the findings that needed to be made could not be made, and they denied the variance, which is the purview of the Planning Commission to do, because variances normally don't come to the council. The variance was appealed, and in essence, the recommendation of the Planning Commission to deny the assembly use overlay was appealed. In the variance application that the church made, they make reference to the fact that there is a parking lot across the street, which is a municipal parking lot. It is available for parking, but it's designed to accommodate those businesses that are in the central commercial zoning district. And we go back here, that's the central commercial zoning district outlined by the red. This is not. And those businesses that are within the central commercial zoning district, by ordinance, are not required to provide parking. Everything else that's outside of it is obligated to provide parking. So even though the parking lot does exist, it isn't there for other businesses that aren't within the central commercial zone to use. And one of the concerns that the commission had was, if you add the assembly use overlay and grant the variance, you cannot regulate how that assembly use operates. And so if, for example, they have a wedding reception and it's on a Saturday afternoon, it would conflict with the business's ability in the downtown to use that lot. Of course, on Sunday, when the services existed, if the businesses in the downtown, and more specifically Bud's, were to be having brunch, which they do have, again, the availability of parking would be limited. And a number of the people who spoke at the Planning Commission meeting expressed that concern, because once the zoning were added, there wouldn't be a way for the city to regulate the operation of that facility, and that was done deliberately by the council at the time. They are not subject to a conditional use permit, which allows the city to apply conditions that regulate that kind of use. So I won't go through the whole staff report, but in essence, the two issues before you tonight are an appeal in essence of a recommendation that the Planning Commission made to you to deny the assembly use overlay for this property, and a appeal of a decision that the Planning Commission in fact did make, which is to deny the variance. I would like to point out, just for your information, there are other sites in the city of Dixon already developed that could conceivably accommodate this use. One which the appellant and applicant has looked into it to some degree is the old Ramtown Karate. The advantage that facility has is it was an assembly use before, when it was being used to teach children karate. So it doesn't have the building code issues as far as converting from one type of use of an office to another type of use of assembly use. There is also a vacant, I believe, laundromat in the Long's Hometown Shopping Center. That's 1015 North First Street. That conceivably, again, could have the assembly use overlay added to it and accommodate this use. Thirdly, there is a vacant space in the Safeway Shopping Center. That's the Dixon Creamery, or was the Dixon Creamery, that could accommodate this use. And then lastly, there are school facilities in the city that could accommodate an assembly use. And so there are other places that they could locate, albeit not lots of places where they could locate, but there are ones that do exist that wouldn't have the same obstacles, I guess would be the way I'd look at it from a planning perspective, to move forward with that type of use. And so with that, I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.